where we have guests that help us become empowered. And I always have so many different ones. And today I'm very, very excited. My guest today is Jason Hill. And I want to give you just a little background about Jason. Jason is a tech entrepreneur, podcast host, and founder of the Owwll App, revolutionizing connections through instant one-on-one audio calls with features in prominent publications like Forbes and the Wall Street Journal. He's recognized for his forward-thinking use of technology through his nationally syndicated podcast, the Boca Raton Shrimp Tank, and the Owl podcast. Jason has conducted over 300 interviews showcasing his commitment to highlighting the stories of CEOs, entrepreneurs, and experts while fostering relationships within the business community. So I'm so very, very excited to have Jason here with me today. And without any further ado, let me get him on board here. And I say, hello, Jason. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm having a great morning and I'm excited to be on your show and share some of my journey, building the Owwll app and my podcast platforms and just here to share information, of course.
Yes, yes. And actually, we don't live too far away. You're also in Florida, right?
Yes, I'm standing in Boca Raton, Florida. I live in a small town called Parkland, Florida, about 30 minutes outside of Boca.
Mhm.
And I moved here about 7 years ago from New York.
Oh, nice, nice. Talking about moving here from New York, I moved 7 years ago as well from Virginia. But before
Yeah.
that, I actually moved from Germany. And by the way, I just want to let you know, and I want to let my listeners know, I literally just returned last night from Germany. I was there for 2 weeks with my family, and I spoke just German. And sometimes I spoke English with them, and sometimes I don't know which language I'm talking about. So if I start talking German or Gym English or something like that, that's the reason why. Just to give you a heads up.
Well, keep it English for me. I don't know German too well.
I'll try my best. I'll try my best. So before we talk about Owl, because I'm very excited about that,
Yeah.
because I'm also just very a very short time ago I joined that community, and I can only say it has been already an amazing experience. But before I go there, I would like to know how you began your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, that's a great question. I started through my father. He owned a store in New York City called Captain Hooks, and from a young age, I would go to his store. He would drive from Port Washington, New York, to Manhattan, and I'd work behind the counters, and I'd learn to communicate with customers. And the old way of thinking, the customer is always right, and make sure they have a great experience. So I really learned through him. And then outside the store, he would go to a lot of garage sales, flea markets, and buy merchandise for his store. He owned a nautical antique store in the South Street Seaport, which was really unique for its time in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So I really learned through him. And then at a young child doing the lemonade stand, selling candy on the bus, I just always had that entrepreneurial spirit within. And I graduated college and went to become a financial advisor because it's very entrepreneurial. You had to build your client book from scratch. And I did that. And I still do that today. And that's actually what helped me bootstrap Owwll, right? I had, revenue coming in from one company. I was able to say I could start this new company called Owwll because I felt there was a need in the market. I saw the growth of entrepreneurship. I saw that everyone wanted to have a side hustle. You're right. We see this on all social platforms. And I said, well, what better than a tool where you could call someone instantly and collaborate, connect with them, network, and really just foster meaningful relationship at an advanced pace where I felt that the market just was missing that. I felt the market is going the other direction where everyone has their guards up on social media. We get all these DMs, you're right, everyone's getting spammed to death, and we don't know who we should allow in anymore. And
Mm,
Owwll gives us those protections and those boundaries to allow us to speak with one another. And that's why I built it.
Yeah, I want to go into the details of that as well. But just from what you shared with us here was that entrepreneurial spirit was always there. You learned from your dad, and then you just shifted, and just building a new company is, you know, also not
Yeah.
so easy, or investing in your own company. Uh, I know from my own experience, it takes a lot of investment sometimes to start something. But I want to talk about the communication part of it, because what you said is so true. The way we communicate today is so different than it was just 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Of course.
And 10 years ago, as you said, everything was social media. But today, social media is so different. It's almost like either somebody's pouring their heart out totally, but for us, we sometimes don't even know who are these people. Are they scammers? And sometimes we are being so scammed on social media and getting those DMs all the time. Here, sell,
Yeah.
sell, sell. So I totally get it. Things shifted. What is different? And you mentioned already you started seeing the shift on social media. Now, tell us what Owl is, what it does, that app, and why you build it. So get a little bit more into detail.
That's a great question because it means a lot of different things to different professions, right? But I'm gonna start with the story this morning. I got in my car at 7:15 this morning, dropped my kids off at school, right? And as I dropped them off, I saw one of my good friends that was on my podcast, The Shrimp Tank, Jeffrey Schmidt, who sold his company, Florida Salt Scrubs, which you may know. It's in Whole Foods, it's in Publix down here in Florida. And pretty much, I was like, this is so cool. He's live. I haven't spoken to him for a while. I called him. He was listed at $1 for a 10-minute conversation. I called him instantly. He picks up. And what that means when I say like he's available is he set a timer mechanism in the Owwll app saying, you can call me, at a set rate. In his case, he set it at $1. Some people would set it at $100 for their 10-minute rate. But it provided me access to Jeffrey. And what was really unique is I would have never called Jeffrey this morning, right? It just like I would have had to text him the old school way and be like, hey, Jeff, haven't talked to you in a while. We've gotten so awkward with our close relationships or acquaintances. It's like I have
Mm,
thousands of people in my cell phone, but I'm never going to text them, right? I
right.
always think I should, and I should reconnect. And this happens all the time with relationships, but Owwll helps that. A close, individual that I always wanted to chat with was available. And I now could just hit the call button and ready for this. We spoke my entire car ride on my commute for about 40 minutes or so. I got to my house, I still kept speaking to him all the way up till 8:30. And we just had so many good things to share. We were just trading off knowledge. He was telling me things about Owwll. I was talking to him about his coaching service. And we were just helping one another and we were collaborating. And it's just so unique that this app enabled, that to occur, that
Mm.
connection, that access point. And it's in-app
So,
calls, so we,
y-
we don't share each other's cell phones, which is important.
mm,
Um, and the calls have boundaries. It starts at 10 minutes and you have to request more time. So it's just super important to realize like it's not just like, oh, I could have just called Jeff on a cell phone call, right? Or I could have just went on Instagram and said, let's chat. It's just like it opened up that opportunity for us to have a one-on-one audio call.
okay. Now, what is the difference between someone you already know
Yeah,
and, so for example, if I am an entrepreneur, and what is the
yeah.
benefit for me as an entrepreneur to have an app like Owl, or have the Owl app? uh, I don't know any of these people.
That's a great question because it's two-sided, right? That was an example of a connection where I already knew someone and the app really benefited me, right? But what about the other end where someone like yourself, you went available on the Owwll app and I did not know you. I called you and we started having a conversation. We started filling each other out like a typical networking meeting. The first 5 minutes, oh, what do you do? Where are you from? Right? And it's a great place to have that introduction call to get to know someone and see what comes from it. And an example is today, right? I am on your podcast because of that connection through
Hmm.
the Owwll app. We had a conversation, and look at us today. Now we're collaborating and we're learning more and building a more valuable relationship. I'll see you probably at Podfest in January. Then we'll see each other in person and we'll give each other a hug and be like, it all started though from an intro call on Owwll. It's a ripple effect. So I look at it as you could have conversations with people that you don't know, no different than, when you start a connection request on LinkedIn, and then it starts with like a like and a comment and maybe a direct message, and then it turns into a Zoom, right? It's no different than that. Owwll just gives you access at a set price. So if you were listing yourself at $10 for 10 minutes, I read your profile, I'm like, this looks like someone that, I would like to jump on a conversation with. It provides me that access point to do so in a secure way. It's an in-app phone call, and I get to leave you a review, so you must be held accountable. I must be held accountable. Just because I'm paying to talk to you, what if I say something inappropriate? Well, you could review me back, say Jason was inappropriate during the call. He asked me things that I really, felt uncomfortable speaking about, after not really knowing this individual.
So
So
it's really, really professional. It's really on a professional
professional.
level. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
not, yeah, yeah. So it's not a dating site or anything like that.
No, no, no.
So one of the things I also wanted to share with my listeners, I was introduced to the Owl app at the beginning, but I didn't quite understand it,
Yep.
so I didn't do anything with it. So, and
Correct.
then it was like for months before I got a phone call, and then, or we were on a Zoom call actually, and you were explaining it. So
Yeah.
the best thing is that I can call someone that, see, let me back up a little bit. I thought this app was for professional, that, okay, if I need the service, if I need
Yeah.
advice, I have to call them, which is true too.
Yes.
However,
It's one of
uh,
them.
one of them, but
Yeah.
what I didn't understand, and the benefit that I also already can see and repped in my
Yeah.
short time that I'm there, is I have the control by looking at someone that interests me, who is available, because you don't
Yep.
have to be available all the time, you set your time, and then I can talk with them, and then I can have a conversation, and that can also lead to new business. So
Correct.
we are in
Correct.
control too, right?
Oh, very, very. Because it's two-sided. You're letting people call you, right? And you control who comes in based on the price level that you set, right? If you set your price at $100, they'll probably get very few calls unless you have a big social audience that you're allowed to promote to, right? Or you're doing a speaking engagement, and at the end you say, call me tomorrow on Owwll from 10 to 12, and you have 1,000 people in the audience. Yeah, some of them are going to call you at $100,
Yeah.
right? But most of the time, if you just go available on the app, your price is probably going to be in the $1 to $10 range, and that gauges how many calls you receive. At $1, you'll get the most calls, of course.
Hmm.
And what's just so unique about Owwll, you said it, it's about the opportunities from the calls that come from it versus the revenue from the calls. And that's where a lot of people first download the app or see it on social media and they make a mistake. They judge it saying, oh, well, I don't want to trade my time for money, right? It's just not worth it. If I take 10 calls and I make $10 on those 10 calls, is it really worth $100 of my time? And then they stop using the app or they don't give it a try. And then
Hmm.
I turn it around. I say, wait a second, right? When we look at most businesses, why they succeed, it's usually because they have enough meetings, right? If you look at, I'll just use an example. We'll say a property and casualty like insurance broker, right? If that person doesn't have regular meetings to sell homeowners insurance or auto insurance, they're going to go out of business, right? So what does Owwll do? It helps that person create connections, right? And if they speak on Owwll, let's just use a real example, to 30 people in a month, they're not going to turn 30 people into clients,
No.
right? The opportunity is that you turn one or two of them into clients. That's the real expectation. But ready for this? What if you also got on 3 podcast shows, right, from those 30 people you spoke with? And what happens if you went to one local event for networking that someone invited you to, or one event like Podfest Expo, right, where you got to meet someone? So I always say it's the ripple effect of like these conversations are not designed just for leads. they're designed for all things surrounding your business, but also your personal life. You'll meet people on here that will become your friends. We have people on the
Mhm.
platform that have had just natural conversation, not good business, connections on that side, but just pure friendships, and they visit that other individual city, and I see them hugging, and they post it like met on Owl. So
Yeah.
it's really unique to see people do that. It's very similar how you see LinkedIn, where people connect on LinkedIn, and then one day there's LinkedIn meetups. So we're seeing those same aspects, and there's just so many different verticals you could use the app for, because I think so often people say, well, it's setting my time and taking calls, and I'm always reversing it. I'm saying, no, go on offense,
Yeah.
right? If you go on offense, say, look who's out there, and if there's 30 people that you could call every minute of the day on this app, and then you could go in there and say, well, there's 4 people that I could see their bio and are great people that I want to be able to foster a relationship with, it seems, call them, feel them out. Is
Mhm.
there chemistry? And see where the conversation goes. And if you do that every single month, you know, the results will follow. We see this,
Absolutely.
all the time in business. It's the power of your network. And that's why they always say the quote, like, your network is your net
Your
worth,
net worth.
right? And you see
Exactly.
and you see people landing jobs through their network. You ask anyone's like their network always landed them the job. That there's always, something tied to the people that individual knows
And
for their
and
success.
even if you don't get a direct client out of a
Yep.
conversation or two, but you build that relationship, but
Yep.
that person knows what you do, and all of a sudden said, "Hey, you know what? I have a friend here who does ABC. That's
Yes.
exactly what you need." So there are also referrals in on
Oh,
that
yeah.
end. I love it. I have used it in a very short time, and then I went away to Germany. How far spread is? Where can you use the app? Only in the United States or in other countries as well?
Currently, it's United States and Canada,
Hmm.
and we're waiting for that aha moment where we have enough scale where it makes
Hmm.
sense to start expanding internationally. You have to be
Which,
very careful expanding internationally. It brings more scams, to
yeah,
the platforms. You're dealing with regulations with money from one country to another, right? I could call someone for $10,000, and then you have money regulations that are involved,
yeah,
and just different laws per country about how, if advice is given from one individual to another. There's laws around different professions, so we have to be very careful. It's not as easy as other apps that are free, where you could just go, oh, I'll open up internationally, and the more people that download it, the better. We often have to be in a controlled environment where, like, we see it on LinkedIn, like certain connection requests is always like, I could build you an app, right? Or I could
yeah,
sell you this. And it's from a lot of countries where, like, it's just consistently solicitation with no boundaries. And we have to be careful, because that will, really hurt the app. If all the calls start coming in, and, you're getting solicited, you're gonna be
yes,
like, hey, this app was a great concept, but I feel like this is like that LinkedIn-ish, where, like, you keep getting sold, your
mhm,
website could be better, right? Like, and we
yeah,
all get
yeah.
those from multiple countries. So I am very cautious before
I like that.
going to different countries until we have the right thing happening in the United States before kind of opening it up country by country.
Yeah, I so like that what you just said, uh, but also going one step further, asking you on your entrepreneurial journey,
Yeah.
there were probably a lot of ups and downs. And how did you deal with that? And what advice can you give somebody who is starting their entrepreneurial journey or perhaps is in the midst of one of those situations where it is in the down movement?
Yeah, that's a loaded question, because I think there's a lot of fluff around it on the internet, right? What we see on LinkedIn posts, what we see on Instagram posts, and you never know what the others are really going through,
Mm,
and really their support system behind the scenes, what's keeping them alive. So often, it's troubling sometimes, because people are going out to build products, and the truth is, like, 99.99% it's going to fail, right? And they're looking at someone else saying, you could do it, you could do it, like all the motivational stuff. But it's not reality, based on the cost structure of building a technology like Owl, or the resources behind the scenes with the network. So I think you got to be very cautious. I know we live in an entrepreneurial spirited mind on social media today, but people have families, right? I have a family right here, right?
Mhm.
Here's my two little kids, right? And
Oh,
I have a 9 and 7 year old. Here's my son, right? And a cool thing, like no one could fill your shoes with a Nike shoe, of course, with Father's Day on it. So I have to be very cautious that like I don't put my family in jeopardy overextending myself, right? And when I see a lot of entrepreneurs going for it, I think they sometimes don't just get advice from the right people.
yeah,
um, they get advice from people not in their field, and what ends up happening is it's not applied to that new technology they're building or that business that they're going at. It's a lot easier to buy a business for $1 million and then grow it to 2 million versus growing a business from 0 to 1 million. Right,
yeah.
growing something from scratch is way harder, and unfortunately, a lot of people risk a lot and lose a lot, right? And
Mhm.
my guidance would be like what I went through. And I could say that I didn't start this journey until I had a very successful financial service firm and I had recurring revenue from that firm, knowing that a paycheck was coming in regardless of the expenses going out, right? If I didn't have that financial service firm, Owwll would have been over year one,
Yeah,
over.
I
Wouldn't
totally
have
get
made
it.
would
Yeah.
not have made it, right? And still to this day, we're over 3 years into development. That's how long it's taken to get Owwll to be what it is, what you see today, and it still has bugs, right? And
Mhm.
I just have to overcome those bugs, month in and month out, working on it with our community and our developers. But it's the hardest thing I've ever done. I first thought the hardest thing in my career was the first 5 years of my financial service firm when you had no clients and you had to run around marketing yourself day in, day out, 50, 60-hour work weeks, getting told no a million times, right? In a field where only 1, 2% of people in their 20s make it, right? And I overcame that, and when I started to do Owwll, it was also timing, right? Timing, everyone was home during COVID. I knew people wanted to communicate more. I knew entrepreneurship was scaling, and I knew more people needed a technology to communicate easier and get access to people easier. And also, I had the budget. That is the biggest component here, is like I knew the distance and the runway I had, and also the runway I could continue to create because I could still sell financial service products to create opportunities, that could come in on a big level, like sales, right? Any sales. If you're a real estate professional, you can sell $4 million home and come into a 3% commission overnight, right? And make a lot of money. I am in that industry where I knew I could work harder to make more money if I need to make ends meet. And I have. I've had to balance all of the above: a family, financial service firm, hundreds of clients that rely on me, plus the whole entire Owwll community and all the developers, and leading kind of the future focus of where this app is. So you have to imagine like there's way more going on behind the scenes than anyone ever actually can see. But the power is back to the relationships. I have such a strong community of close to now 400 different podcast interviews I've done, call in podcast shows that I've done. So you can think thousands of relationships that are rooting for us,
Yeah, and
right?
what you said is so true. I know it was a loaded question, but you also gave a loaded answer, and I just wanted
Yeah,
to uh, 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 pull it down and
yeah.
dissect it a little
Bite
bit.
size it, bite size it.
Exactly. But one thing you said is so true. A lot of people go in, and what's yeah on the internet is you know, burn your bridges, burn your bridge. Now, bridges is
Oh,
some a different.
yeah, I know
Burn your
what you
bridge.
mean.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Say no to everything.
yeah,
Yeah, I know what you
exactly. No, and it's not to say go full in, but be responsible, especially when you have a family. Don't quit your job right away when you still build your
mean.
side
Sure.
hustle, and get the advice from someone who's done it before. And then the other thing that you said is also so true. It takes time and commitment. And oftentimes people think, oh, it's so easy to start an online business now. Yes, it has never been easier, but at the
Mhm.
same time, it has never been harder because everybody
Correct.
in the world is doing
Correct.
it now,
Correct.
right? So they actually really have to know what they're doing and really
Yeah.
have a plan and work with someone. And I can only say that to new entrepreneurs that if you want to build an online business, build connections first. And
Yeah.
Owl is definitely an app that helps you get through the the jungle of social media that I hear from a lot of clients. They are frustrated because it's like, oh, I have to post every 5 minutes and I don't get anything back, and then I get always spammed. And so that is a great alternative, having an app like
Yeah.
Owl to build those
Yeah.
connections and relationships.
Yeah.
So, wow, this was really good. So, and the other thing that I got out of it is you put in the work
Yeah.
and you also put in the time. This is not something you do just like maybe there is somebody who is very, very lucky at the right time at the right place and
Yeah.
has the right support. But this is the very, very few. For the rest of us entrepreneurs, we have to work for it and we have to build it over years if we want to have a sustainable business. And I can see it happening with Owl because it's such a great community, what I've learned so far. So thank you for sharing all of that. Now, Jason, I could ask you so many more questions, but we are, we are running out of time. Uh,
Sure.
but if someone wants to get a hold of you, or well, get on Owl. I'm going to put the link. I'm going to put my
Sure.
link in there, right? So that can get a hold of you, me, and so many other wonderful entrepreneurs. But if they want to follow you, how can they do that?
That's a great question. Obviously, like everyone's DMing me, and I get so many messages from so many different verticals. And the truth is, the easiest way, here's the secret, is just download Owl, get in there, and pretty much on my profile, I list if you put a deposit in of $99 and call me at my $99 rate, I will return your $99 back to your Owl account. So it's absolutely free to talk to me. I just want people to be committed to taking my time serious, which the deposit does that. And I can't tell you how many people sit on the app and still DM me like, hey, I want to jump on a Zoom. I want to jump on this. I go, but you see my profile. It literally says, doors wide open. Call
Yeah,
me. I am not charging you. I'm just saying be committed to using Owl in the future. But that shows me they're not committed to using Owl in the future then, right? They just want to solicit me their services outside of Owl. Right. So what I always say is like Owl, right there, that is the primary way. If you DM me on LinkedIn, it even says the same thing. I have an auto response message. If you want to get to the front of the line, I'm always available every day. Literally every day I go live on Owl and I wait for people to call me at the $99 rate, right?
yeah,
So I give everything to our community. You're in our community, I call people all the time. I called someone this morning I mentioned. Yesterday I called someone who was having a tech issue on Owl. She had a setting incorrect on her device and the phone wasn't ringing properly. And I was about to email her back, and she went available on Owl. I just called her.
yeah.
What's better than a good old, hey, this is the founder. I'm going to troubleshoot a problem with you. And you know what she did after that? This morning, I wake up on LinkedIn and she posted about it. So this is the difference between one founder versus the next. One who ignores the problem, one that just steps in, gets their hands dirty, calls them. Now that person is on Owl, literally saying game changer, right? This is a connection tool. And also I educate her how to use it the right way, like you explained it,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
right? She was very similar to you. Like, she's like, I don't know yet. How do I do this? And then I explained it's not about the revenue from the calls, it's about the opportunities. And it just like, boom, I get it
Yeah.
now. Makes perfect sense. Um, but she was touched by the person who referred her, then me, and she's posting about it to her community. So that's what it's all about. One connection at a time, and one turns to many often. So just, find me right on Owl, owwll.com, and then go to the App Store, Google Play Store, download it, call and yourself, call you.
Yes, exactly. I make sure I'm going to put the link in the show notes so everybody can just click on it and get
Yeah,
started. That's what we're going to do. All right, Jason, thank you so much for your time. And I can't wait to have more conversations with you and others on Owl.
cool. Well, thank you for having me. Enjoy the experience.